It's really one of the most exciting adventures you'll encounter in the Catholic Church. How a man goes from living in the world and then leaves all of that to become a Catholic priest. Have you ever wondered how men become Catholic priests? This is a question that I'm often asked as a seminary formator, and having done this work now for a decade and a half, it's really one of the most exciting adventures you'll encounter in the Catholic Church. How a man goes from living in the world and then leaves all of that to become a Catholic priest. So today, what I'd like to do is walk through with you the different steps necessary in order for a man to become a Catholic priest. Because oftentimes the world of the seminary and the priesthood are often shrouded in mystery, and many persons don't even know what happens in order for someone to become a Catholic priest. And here, I can just simply speak about my own experience of becoming a Catholic priest as a layman who went to a public university on the East Coast, and I worked in consulting for a number of years before I left the world and entered into the seminary, and then went through the process of becoming a Catholic priest at a Catholic seminary. So the first thing I want to lay out at the beginning is that when a man is discerning the priesthood, he's really discerning a few things. One, he's discerning whether or not he's called to live a life of celibacy in the priesthood, because that's part of becoming a priest in the Latin Roman Rite, what you would normally identify as the typical Catholic priest that you would see out in public or even in the media or in popular culture. So that celibacy piece is an important one. And then another discernment that the man is trying to discern is he's trying to figure out whether or not he's called to diocesan priesthood, which means that he would typically be a parish priest working in a geographical parish with a parish church. And that life is mostly given to running the parish, and here I mean celebrating the seven sacraments, and then also administering the different ministries of the parish, whether it be the school or the variety of different apostolates or ministries that are available there. The other option for the man considering the vocation is perhaps he's called to a religious order, for instance, like the Dominicans or the Franciscans or the Jesuits or the Benedictines or the Redemptorists. It's a long, long list. Each of these religious orders have what are called charisms, or particular gifts of forte that they offer in the church. So for instance, the Jesuits and Dominicans are very well known for their educational institutions. So a lot of the work they do, for instance, is in education. If you were to join the Missionaries of Charity priests, these are the priestly group founded by Mother Teresa's order, they work mostly with the poor. So you have to discern precisely where you're being called. And it's true, sometimes I've had students in diocesan seminary, like the one I teach at, move from diocesan life into religious life. I've also had the same happen, where we take in men who were once in religious orders and felt it was not their calling, still felt called to be a priest, but they felt more called to do the work of a parish priest, running a parish and mostly focusing their ministry on sacramental life. So once those discernments are decided, then the man has to make application, hopefully after having gone through some even years of spiritual direction with a trusted priest, to help test the spirits, if you like, in terms of where they believe the Holy Spirit might be calling them to. Again, here, we're talking less about a career, as if I was going to become a doctor or a lawyer, an accountant, and more really a vocation, a calling, more analogous to marriage, because here we're after a state of life, not just simply a profession. So for the sake of this presentation, let's just stick with the diocesan seminary experience, because that's the one I work in, and that's the one we're working out of right now. The first stage after one has decided to make application to their local diocese or the diocese that they want to study for. And again, those are geographical distributions around the country, and they're all over the world. They would have to make appeal to the bishop for sponsorship. The bishop and the diocese itself has to accept the man as a candidate for the priesthood in their particular diocese. And then the next application would be to the particular seminary where that diocese sends. So in the case of St. Patrick's Seminary, we have many dioceses represented here from the West Coast and the Pacific Rim, including Guam and Honolulu. But we also have seminarians from religious orders as far back away from this part of the country back east with the Marians of the Immaculate Conception, for instance, just to give you an example, and many dioceses in between. So if you notice here already, there are two applications. One is to your local diocese, and the second is to the particular seminary. And admission isn't just merely a matter of transcripts and resumes and grades, but these candidates are put through a whole battery of psychological tests, writing, and other academic diagnostics. It's a pretty comprehensive application to ensure, at least up front, that they have minimal suitability to pursue a priestly life. Once they're admitted by the diocese, and then once they're admitted by a particular seminary where that diocese sends, then the next step is for them to come to seminary for their first day. The first year is called a Propedeutic Year, which is Greek for preparatory. This is a year that is non-academic. It's an opportunity for the new men to live in the seminary setting, more or less, and to experience the schedule of prayer without heavy academic duties or responsibilities. So this year is given mostly to human formation. The men have serious spiritual direction. Some of the men have to go through counseling and therapeutic services in order to help mitigate gaps in their backgrounds that could prevent them from making a very solid and good discernment. It's also a year where men enter into what's called a technology fast. That's right. They give up their smartphone for a whole year, and they disengage from technology altogether in order to create bandwidth in the soul for prayer, extended human conversations, and the establishing of fraternal ties among the men that they're going to be preparing for. Afterwards, the next 2 years are called discipleship. We call this D1 and D2 for short. And discipleship is essentially the formal beginning of priestly formation, but it's done with a post-baccalaureate philosophy track. So every semester for 4, the men take about 15 to 18 credits of philosophy, language courses, courses in the catechism, and many of the early introductory classes that lead into the next stage of 3 years, which is configuration. Actually, in many cases now extended into 4 years of configuration. And this is what is typically called graduate theology proper. And they go through the entire battery of courses where they're taking courses in canon law, scripture, history, moral theology, and dogmatic theology as well. And of course, during this entire time, they continue with a human formation advisor who works with them in the external forum. Meanwhile, also working with a spiritual director who works with them in the internal forum. And all of these tracks are going along, even as these men take time each week to do field work, meaning they would work in a hospital, or in a chancery, or in a nursing home, or in a school, getting some real-life practical experience. And then the final stage is called the vocational synthesis stage. And that's the stage where the man leaves the seminary, having completed all of his academic work, again, 2 years of post-baccalaureate philosophy and 3 or 4 years of graduate theology. And then he goes as a transitional deacon into his diocese, into a parish, to work, if you like, on a pastoral year with his diocese, with a particular pastor signed by the bishop for about 1 year in preparation, finally, for ordination to the priesthood. Remember, at this stage, the man is already an ordained transitional deacon, just awaiting 1 year of training, on-the-job training, to become a fully fledged Catholic priest. So you can see the process is quite long and arduous. It's 1 year propedeutic, 2 years of discipleship, up to 4 years of configuration, and in vocational synthesis stage, my math is right, that's almost 9 years. So the process of becoming a Catholic priest is long and arduous, and in religious life, the number of years can take just about as long, in some cases, even longer. But given the responsibilities that priests are asked to take on, especially care of souls, hearing confessions, celebrating the sacraments with any number of groups of people in the Catholic community, you can understand why the training is so rigorous and arduous and why it takes such a long time. So please pray for the men who are making this discernment. And perhaps if that's you, certainly consider contacting your local vocations director in your local diocese to begin the conversation as to whether or not God might be calling you to the Catholic priesthood. If you like this content and other content we provide here at St. Patrick's Seminary, please feel free to click on the links above. And as always, thanks and God bless.